Hey, it's Mega, aka the Art Messiah, here to save you from your art sins. Welcome back to another artist interview where we uncover the secrets of comic making and art. Today, I have a very special guest that goes by the name King Tenta or Tenta. So let's welcome him. And how are you doing today, man?
Hey, I'm doing great. How about yourself?
I'm doing great too. Thanks for asking. So we are going to kind of jump right into it. And I just want you to kind of introduce yourself. Tell me a little bit about yourself, where you're from, just a quick introduction.
Okay, yeah. Well, as far as where I'm from, that's a pretty long story. I just like to break it down. I was born in Florida, grew up in Japan for about 5 years until I was like 6 years old. Came back to Florida, then moved to North Carolina for like high school and college. And now I'm currently staying in Los Angeles taking a couple of classes. So that's the long and short of it. And as Mega said, my name's Tenta, aka King Tenta. I do a lot of graphic design, but a lot of comic art as well. And yeah, my inspirations are anywhere from anime, manga, hip hop culture, all that sort of thing. So
That's really cool. So I noticed that you mentioned you're taking some classes. Are those art classes? Or are they for something else?
yeah, they're art classes. So mainly like figure drawing and gesture drawing, just really trying to hone in on that sort of thing, as well as some storyboarding classes and some rapid sketching classes, just to kind of improve my speed drawing different things. So it's what I got
Nice,
going on now. Yeah.
nice. So for the people that don't know, could you explain some of the projects that you're working on and why we should be like really excited about your work and you as an artist? Give me your
Yeah.
pitch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Most definitely. So I have this problem where I always have three or four projects going on at the same time. But I have
Yeah.
two main ones that are kind of visible right now, at least for social media and all my friends who follow my comics. The main one that I'm working on is Ninja Squad Law Deluxe, and it's a comic about a group of hunters who fight these mysterious beings called fiends. And it's a comic all about being your best self every day and never getting lazy. Basically always trying and striving to improve yourself, day by day. Um, so as far as the target demographic for Ninja Squad Law Deluxe specifically, I like to say it's like the comics equivalent of E for everyone, right? Basically, anybody can pick it up and have a good time. Anyone can get a message from it, or at least enjoy the art.
Yeah, I really like that in a story, something that's like accessible and kind of easy to get into. And honestly, what you're describing sounds a little bit like an artist journey. You always got to strive every day to improve. So, sure, we could all
Exactly, and
learn
without
something from that.
right, and without spoiling it, that's a pretty big analog as far as what I'm doing now, right? Coming all the way out here to Los Angeles from North Carolina to take these classes and really become my best artistic self. It's really parallel with what Ninja Boy and Ninja Girl got going on right now. So yeah,
Yeah, that's a big move. So I'm excited for you about that. Can you tell me a little bit about what got you into comics and art when you were young, or did it happen when you were like a teenager, or
yeah. Well, it's one of those things like a lot of people will say the same thing where it's like they've always loved drawing, they've always loved art. But for me, I only really got into creating around middle school age, right? Without going into too much details, my family's came on some pretty tough times, right? So the only thing that I really had to enjoy and to really peel into were copies of Shonen Jump, right? Like no matter how old the copies were, I loved those things. So, where a lot of other kids were, going to the arcade, spending a bunch of coin, I would just be sitting around and, just reading comic books. So, I like to tell people that Shonen Jump and Spider Man were my best friends growing up, at least. And then it's one of those things that as you're creating, people around you are like, oh man, like you're coming up with that off the top. That's amazing. I really appreciate that skill. And, as a shy kid, age of 14, 15, it was a good way for me to reach out to the people around me. So it was one of those things where I kept developing that habit and kind of made it beyond a habit, something that's kind of a career at this point. So
yeah, that's amazing. And like when you were younger, I guess, and kind of getting into that, was your family kind of creative? Like, how did you know to like pick up the pencil and just try it?
That's the thing. My family, they all have a creative spark, but I don't think a lot of them tap into it. My younger brother, he does a lot of hip hop, so like he's a rapper and everything, so he taps into that side of it. And my youngest brother, he's also pretty artistic, and so is my sister. But it's not the sort of thing where it was like a career for all of us or anything like that. I think the inspiration really did come from just comics, and then when specifically when LaShawn Thomas started doing work and putting it out there,
Mm.
when I saw him kind of like as a black man doing this sort of manga anime inspired artwork, and I was like, I think maybe 13 or 14 when I messaged him on DeviantArt way back in the day. That's when I kind of saw, oh snap, someone like me can make stuff like this, and it's not even that big of a thing. So yeah, definitely some of the online inspirations more so than anyone specific in my family.
Yeah, I get that, and I resonate with that a lot because, um, yeah, I found out about LaShawn Thomas as well, and really a huge inspiration, and really I think the only black artist that I knew at the time that was like into making not only illustrations but illustrations that tell a story.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, that's super inspiring. Um, do you have any like, did you look at a lot of like resources? Did you go to like YouTube, turn to like YouTube for a lot of help to learn to draw? Or was it like going to the library, like taking out books?
Yeah, so that's kind of tough because I was growing up in this era where YouTube was still kind of like cat videos. Like the art community hadn't really found out about YouTube at that point. So
Sure.
for me, a lot of my education was that traditional sort of like high school and, some college education, right? Where to be like, the very formalized, like, hey, draw this bowl of pears, right? All that sort of thing, like still lifes and all that good stuff. Unfortunately, I didn't appreciate it as much as I should have because now I'm kind of thinking, like, man, I wish my observational eye was a little tighter. Um, but it's one of those things that you take what you learn from classes like that and you adapt it into like a comics context, right? But then there was one book that did come out a long time ago that I found that was called, I'm sure you might be familiar with this one as well. It's called How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way. And it
Oh
really
yeah.
breaks down, yeah, it breaks down how to construct the form, basically how to turn a character around in 3D space, all this great stuff. And it's like, oh, snap. Now my characters not only look good from one angle, I can turn them around and I can manipulate them in space to like make a sequential narrative, like make a comic. So yeah, that was definitely one of the books for sure. And then after that, it was just book after book of just amazing art books and stuff that was coming out. I guess around the mid 2000s is when they really started showing up on our shelves in the West. But yeah, stuff like that.
Yeah, that's awesome that you mentioned that because I know I learned a lot from books, and like you're saying, YouTube was, still very young in terms of the art community
Right.
on there. So I went to the library a lot, taking out a lot of how to draw books. Some of them not
Yeah,
so
for
great,
sure. Like, what is
but
the
some of
one?
them
There's
amazing.
one specific. Yeah, there's one specific book. It has like a blue character on the front. I think everybody ended up picking up that book at the book fairs and stuff, the Scholastic book fairs. I think it was literally just called How to Draw Manga. And it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, a lot of people got some bad habits from that book, but it was iconic.
All
Iconic.
right. Yeah, I know. I hear you. That's awesome. So I want to ask, we're talking a little about your inspiration, your resources. What's your typical schedule and process for drawing? You took in all those resources and inspiration. How did you get a schedule for yourself to like always be drawing and kind of develop it into a habit?
Right. So for me, it's kind of tough because I'm not sure if I had a formal process until recently, right? So, when you're in school or whatever, when you have a full time job, you literally have to write down the list of like, okay, I'm going to draw for such and such hours this day. So that's a recent thing. What I've always done though is I'll make sure that I have 4 or 5 like distinct projects going on, right? And make sure that I just draw something every day, right? If I can sit down and show up for 15 minutes, that's great. If I could show up for 2 hours, that's even better. But as long as I'm making incremental progress on something, that's perfect. Now, if it's something deadline driven, then basically all I do is just take the days remaining until the deadline and splice it up. Make sure that I don't go over like 3 or 4 hours a day, obviously for your health and your hands and your wrists and everything, um, and just cut it up that way. But I think the biggest focus that's really helped me is just make sure that I tell myself, no matter how long I'm doing it, I got to draw something today. Like if it's finished, if it's not finished, the big point is just to get to the point where you have the stamina and the dedication to, you know, put that pen to paper every day. Because even if it doesn't turn out great, it's gonna turn out something.
Right. I mean, and even if it doesn't turn out great, like you're saying, like you can always learn from why it didn't turn out great.
Exactly. It's all about mileage, you know what I mean? Smart mileage, but yeah, all about just making sure that you're doing it. You're showing up every day. Because if you don't show up, the skills aren't gonna show up. And that's just, the way it is.
Yeah, that's really good. So, in terms of comic making, and I know a lot of people break it up into like different steps and like different stages.
Right.
Do you have any specific, let's say, like scheduling for like comic making? Do you like spend one day doing pencils, another day doing coloring, or do you like
Yeah.
to, maybe switch it up, jump back and forth? Maybe you can describe that a little bit.
Yeah. So specifically for comics and especially with Ninja Squad Law Deluxe, where I'm trying to keep a monthly cadence, right? Sometimes it's a little more difficult than not, but I always make sure that I have it set in a certain order basically. So I start with thumbnails, right? So before I dedicate myself to a full spread or like initial pencils or anything like that, I just get some chicken scratch blocking and acting down on the page, right? Not even worrying about proportions and everything like that. Just trying to see where the camera's looking and what the scene could look like when I finalize it. And I'll thumbnail the whole entire chapter, right? So like about 14 to 28 pages. I'll just go ahead and make sure that that's all in thumbnail form so I can check the story flow, right? And hopefully I'll have a script by them as well to, base the thumbnails off of. After that, I basically just blow the thumbnails up and then do my initial pencils, like my rough pencils. And then on top of that, once all of my rough pencils are done for each page, I'll go back and I'll ink everything. Then I'll go back to the beginning and then I'll color everything. And then finally I'll do my lettering as well. And that's basically it. Basically making sure that I work my way through the comic as a whole through each step rather than bouncing back and forth between like, oh, I'm doing pencils over here, but I'm doing the final inks here, right? Just so I'm in the right mindset and it flows from first page to last, if that makes sense.
No, that I totally get that. That makes perfect sense. Really seeing the comic as a whole and making sure you're kind of elevating it. And like, so if you're working on a pencil for one page or working on the pencil for another page as well, so you can kind of see both at the same time and
Right,
see if
right,
they're working
exactly.
well together.
Because it's really easy to get lost in the weeds, right? Like, oh, if I'm penciling this really detailed scene and then the next page is kind of like super sparse in comparison just because, you know what I mean? It's really good to be able to zoom out and kind of get a overall feel for the book flow and just be like, okay, wait, why is this page so sparse as compared to the rest of them? And like I said, if you're honed in on that one tree, you'll miss the forest, as they say. So
Right. I hear you. I hear you. So we all know that comics, like making comics, it takes a lot of time. Art in general takes a lot of time, but making comics specifically, like you're just doing so much. You're drawing, backgrounds, characters, dialogue, text, all that kind of stuff. So, in your time that you spent so far making comics, what is your best tips, best advice for like saving some time, saving some crucial time that you found that works for you so far?
yeah, that's a great question. What I like to tell people is that if you plan and you think, right? Before you even put the pencil to the page, promise you that'll save you a couple of days of work. When I first started Ninja Squad as a concept back in 2016, and obviously it came out 2 years ago now. So, that was a long time ago that I started thinking about it. I had the problem where I would go straight into the page, right? I'd be like, oh, I got a really great idea for a scene. Let me just go ahead and get the rough pencils down. But the problem was there were a lot of story inconsistencies or a lot of acting problems, right? Things that wouldn't look clear, wouldn't make sense thematically that I'd have to sort out after I already drew the page, right? So that's
Mm.
another couple of days of work that I could have avoided if I had just scripted, just typing it out, the whole entire scene, then thumbnailing the whole scene. And then at that point, I would realize, oh, okay, maybe Ninja Girl shouldn't have a Southern accent because that literally doesn't make sense, right? Um, or Ogre, he had a Jamaican accent for the first pass, and like literally nobody else in the universe does. So it's kind of like, yeah, sure, it sounds cool and it's nice flavor, but it doesn't serve the overall story. So if I had written it out completely at the time, I would have seen those inconsistencies and been like, okay, okay, let's dial it back a little bit. So that's definitely one, make sure that you have the planning, the blocking and staging all taken care of before you even start drawing. And then the second thing that I'd say is consider getting good at 3D, right? Like, even if you don't use the 3D as the background, which for some comics will look a little weird, a little quirky, it's great to have something to reference beside the panels that you're drawing, right? So, for example, if you have a really intricate sort of fight scene or something, right? It might be handy to go ahead and block out the scene with, just some simple squares or spheres as chess pieces just to keep track of where everyone's moving. So, those are the two things I'd say: thumbnailing, planning, and just some simple 3D modeling understanding.
Yeah, that's really great. I know as artists sometimes we get so excited and we just jump in on an idea and start drawing before we really think it through. So I like that first tip, and the second tip of using your reference and using some 3D data to keep track of complexities.
Right.
I really like that. Yeah. So now that you've been making this comic and you got your process down and stuff, I want to ask, like, how do you market your work and how do you get your comic in front of more people's eyes?
Yeah, it's a great question. So currently, I mainly market, just using Instagram, some of their sponsorship tools sometimes, but mainly just, reaching out to other artists and being like, hey, I really like your work. I'm putting out a chapter of Ninja Squad La Deluxe. I know that you enjoyed the comic in the past. Check it out, sort of thing. So like direct to reader sort of communication as well. But what I'm starting to realize and what I actually highly recommend is that other artists go to really where the people are, right? So that's emerging platforms like TikTok and stuff like that. There's like a long list of really dope artists like Eat More Spiders, for example, who have a really good connection between Instagram and TikTok, right? Because I mean, especially a comic like Ninja Squad, where it's like an everyone audience, where I kind of want everyone to enjoy it. TikTok's a great place for that because everyone's using it right now. So that's an untapped opportunity for me, is just to kind of diversify my social media platforms. You know what I mean? And then
Yeah, and
also, oh, go ahead. Yeah.
not to cut you off, but I just want to interject real quick because I have been
Hmm.
hearing a little bit more about TikTok and artists using it a little bit more
Right.
and more. So I actually wanted to ask if you had any tips on that or if you've started using it already.
Yeah, I have not yet. I really need to
Okay.
get into that, but yeah, there's definitely a long list of some of my friends who are pretty successful on TikTok as artists as well, and their following has definitely grown steadily, and it's like good engagement, right? So it's people who actually want to engage with your content. It's not like what people used to do on Instagram, where they would pay someone money to send, like, oh yeah, I got a bunch of people who really enjoy this kind of content, I'll send them your way. Nothing like that. It's like literally, this is me, this is my art, hope you enjoy. That's it.
Yeah,
So
I like that. I like that. Well, that's a future
yeah,
video idea. I'll put that on the
100%.
video list. Maybe we can talk about it more later.
Yeah, sounds good.
But go ahead and jump right into your second thing. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh no, it's definitely fine. I would definitely say conventions too, right? If you have the money to split a table with somebody, if you're just starting out, or if you have, you know, if you've been in the game for a while and you can afford like a full table with a few books, some prints, and then just like on the spot commissions, right? Like really quick one tone commissions, just sketch up stuff for people really quick. That's a really great way to drum up some new followers, new friends, fellow artists, etc. So definitely recommend the convention circuit. And in this day and age, everyone has a convention local, so definitely recommend that.
Very cool. Yeah, I love going to conventions myself, so I can see that would be a great way to, market your artwork and your comics and stuff. That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right, the next question is, how do you stay motivated despite challenges, such as like art block, or maybe not getting the amount of recognition that you want, or maybe just something else that's kind of getting you down um, about art? How do you stay motivated?
Right. Yeah. And that's the toughest thing as a creator, right? Because we hold all of these creations close to our chest, right? They mean a lot to us. We put a lot of time and energy and love into these things. And for it to not pay off, yeah, sometimes it's crushing. Um, I've actually struggled a lot with this coming up, right? And I think it was only the past 2 or 3 years that I've gotten a lot better at just kind of letting go. I'll say that my motivation stems kind of from me needing to see the stories of my characters realized, right? Like the thought of, oh man, I started this thing and people don't know how it ends. Like I know how it ends, but no one else does. Like I gotta do right by these characters. I gotta keep going no matter what my current skill set might be, no matter how good or bad I feel like my art's coming out, I got to keep going until it's finished, right? Um, as far as art blocks go, that's something we all deal with. But I think if we change our mindset a little bit, right, it'll probably help out a lot. So instead of trying to bash our head against the same thing that's just, oh man, I can't get this right, or I just don't feel like drawing, we just need to feel comfortable with like dropping our sketchbook for a little bit, walking outside and just looking at something, right? No matter how mundane that thing is, just observing that thing and capturing it on paper, right? Because by
Right.
opening your eyes and looking at something different and drawing something different, promise you that it might solve that art block that you have on another project, right? Just because we tend to get in our own ruts, especially as creators, where we are literally making our own world, it's easy to get lost in that world, right? And it's easy to not bring in enough inspiration to keep our souls as artists fulfilled to the point where we can talk about something. So we need to go out and experience more so we can say more. And that's kind of what I always do with art block. Like recently, I walked up the mountain up here in Pasadena, California, and I just looked at the trees honestly. And I drew some janky little trees. They didn't turn out good, but it really shook me out of that art block, right? Because I was doing something that I don't usually do, and that's drawing foliage. And then I came back to the next chapter of Ninja Squad, and it just flowed out of the pen.
Right. Yeah, I like that. That's really powerful. And I guess in that process, sometimes you just like fall in love with the process of drawing. So you don't even matter. It doesn't matter if you're in an art block or not. Um,
Right.
what what are what are some of like the favorite things that you found just about like the process of drawing that really keeps you coming back over and over again?
Yeah, I'll honestly say it's seeing other people's work, right? Like for example, I think I found your page through this Mega Man Zero joint that you drew. And that was amazing to me. Like the way that you captured it, it was so dynamic and it matched the Game Boy games that I was really into, right? Like the Mega Man Zero games, I was like, that's fresh. It's like a unique take on it. It feels like you, but it also evokes the same energy of the source material. I remember seeing that and I was like so jazzed about it, right? So that's the biggest
Thanks,
thing for
man.
me in art. Yeah, yeah, most definitely. The biggest thing for me in art is really just looking at the people around me and being like, damn, I love how we all have such diverse styles and modes of expression, right? Like, no matter the fact that, I mean, I feel like you and I both are probably inspired by some of that stuff, right? Like Mega Man, et cetera, et cetera. But our art looks completely different, right? They're both
Right.
really stylized and really dope, but they're completely different. And I 100% love that. Like, for example, take Oda Sensei, dude who does One Piece, and you
Yep.
take Mashima Sensei, the dude who does Fairy Tail, right? A lot of people look at those two art styles and they say, "Oh man, look at Mashima biting off of Oda." No, that's not quite it, because there's still a lot of difference in Mashima's artwork. Sure, he's definitely inspired by Oda, but he brings his own tastes and his own sensibilities to the table. And so that's something that I really love about the process is just being able to look around and see how different people approach the same stuff, you know?
Yeah, I hear that, and that's what I love really about being online and just being able to see so many different artists. When I was younger, I was a little bit limited to how much art I could experience,
Right.
and now there's just a plethora of styles and genres that even though they might not be the same as yours, you can gain so much inspiration from that.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, I really like that. All right. Well, what is the next big steps for you? What are some of your future goals? Maybe like one short term and like one long term goal that you're looking at.
Oh, that's a good way to split it up. Okay. I'll say a short term goal is to finish this saga of Ninja Squad. I don't want to spoil anything, but it's a very pivotal one to their development as fighters, right? Some crazy stuff happens, and I just can't wait to get that done, locked away, and taken care of. Hopefully by the end of summer. So that's a short term goal for sure. And then a long term goal, I'm really interested in kind of transitioning into the animation industry full time. Because, like I do a little freelancing and stuff, both from comics as well as some like minor animation stuff. But I really want to get into storyboarding. So I'm currently taking classes in, like figure drawing and gesture drawing, as well as storyboarding. I'm just trying to get my portfolio up and hopefully get in somewhere, either on this side of town or in New York or something like that. Just somewhere where there's a pretty decent animation contingency.
That would be really cool.
Yeah, most
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah, I would be excited for that too. And I'm really excited about, like, personally, I really love animation, and I'm slowly getting into it now. So
Oh,
we'll,
awesome.
yeah, maybe we can kind of bounce ideas back and forth,
Oh, yeah,
perhaps.
that'd be cool. Are you thinking 2D or 3D?
2D.
Okay, sick. Yeah, that's what I'm trying to get into too, or at least initially. You know what I mean? Because storyboarding, it's a 2D form, but I want to do some of my own personal work as well, uh, at least this year.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm excited to see what you do, man.
Yeah, likewise.
um, and I like how comics and animation, they have a lot of parallels in terms of how you prepare for it, how you do the storytelling. So that
Yeah,
is really cool.
definitely, definitely.
And yeah, so I'm going to segue into the very last question, which is, what is your best piece of advice for beginning comic artists, and maybe I guess artists in general? But what are some of like those big, like, key critical things that people should be thinking about working on?
Yeah. I'll say this as someone who is currently doing more of it because I didn't do enough of it coming up. Draw from life. And I know that,
Mm.
everybody says that, and everyone kind of goes over and over and says, oh, you need to be going to figure drawing, gesture drawing. But it's really true, right? Because there's certain rhythms in nature that you're not going to be able to come up with with on your own, right? So if I'm just kind of saying, okay, I'm going to draw Ninja Boy in this super dynamic pose. This is how he holds the sword. Yeah, cool. It'll look great, but does it turn in space? Does it hold the same impact if you shoot it from this angle, right? Whereas if you're good at figure drawing and gesture drawing of the human form, animal forms too, you'll be able to apply that same rhythm to anything, right? So, for example, if you want to get into mecha design, right? If you want to make a comic about mecha or something like that, which is something I really want to do, just to say that now. But
All right.
you got to get really good at rhythm, right? And proportion, and just how to tweak that proportion to make it look more or less one way or another, right? Look at some of the mechs from Zone of the Enders. There's a reason why they look like that, right? And there's a reason why they look so grounded and imposing. It's because the artists who came up with them had a really good handle on bipedal form and how to make that gesture really read as something that's imposing. Really cool stuff like that. So I guess just to make a long story short, go to figure drawing classes, go to gesture drawing classes, draw your friends, go to a coffee shop with your sketchbook, draw random people, make sure that they don't see you, stuff like that.
All right. No, I like that. And
Yeah,
for all you beginner artists out there, you heard it from the man. It's daily practice. It's drawing from real life, and not necessarily relying on just like copying good artists. You got to get out there and you got to make your own studies. You got to get
right,
that sense of grounding in how you develop your not only style but like you're saying develop your sense of volume and form.
exactly, exactly.
All right, that's really cool. So that actually concludes all the questions that I have for you besides a lightning round of questions, which we will jump right into.
All right, cool.
If you're ready.
Yeah,
You
I'm
may want
prepared.
to. All right,
My body
perfect.
is ready. My body is ready.
All right, well, we're going to be going quick through these questions. So just like one word responses is fine, or maybe like a sentence.
Okay.
All right, here we go. So question number one: what is your favorite music genre?
Hip hop.
Favorite cartoon slash anime?
Steven Universe.
Favorite webcomic?
Ooh, that's hard. Oh, there's so many good ones.
I always trip people up with this one.
Oh yeah, this is too hard. I'd have to give you a whole list. I'm currently reading Lore Olympus, as well as Room with Swords, and a lot of other ones from really great, talented young artists. So yeah, it's too many to list.
Nice. All right, favorite food?
Steak, green beans, and mashed potatoes.
Favorite undiscovered artist?
Ooh, my whole entire friends list on Instagram.
I I hear you. I hear you. And the last one is favorite YouTuber.
Oh, that's hard. Right now I'll say it's the Draftsman, and that's Proco and Marshall Vandruff. They do like an art blog sort of thing that's really cool. It's really nice to listen to while you're working on art and stuff like that. But
Yeah, I
that's a
love
really
those
close
guys.
tie. Yeah, yeah, really great stuff.
All right, cool. Well, thanks for sharing all your tips and information and your inspiration with us today. Really appreciate
Yeah,
it.
most definitely. Anything to help.
Yeah, thanks. I thanks. So last but not least, where can people find you? Where can they find their work? Give me your handles and give yourself a shout out.
All right, sounds good. Y'all can find me at King Tenta on Instagram. That's where I'm most active. I'm trying to get back into Twitter. I've made one post in the past 6 months, so don't get your hopes up. And that's also at King Tenta. And I'm starting a little YouTube thing, just kind of like a vlog type thing, tracking my growth as an artist and my journey here in Pasadena, California. That's also just King Tenta on YouTube. And that's it.
Nice. All right. Thanks. Well, for all of you guys out there listening, thanks for tuning in. Let me know in the comments down below who you'd like to see next. And also let me know what something that you learned from this interview. And I'll be back with another video real soon. And until then, peace and love. And mega out.